The concept of a multiverse is one that often seems to fit video games very naturally. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart and BioShock Infinite both took good advantage of it to open their stories up to new possibilities, for example. But The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak has hopped on that multiverse train with some mixed results. At times, its story doesn't seem to go anywhere for hours on end. But it has some of the best character development the series has ever seen in exchange for that momentum. Daybreak 2 also introduces meaningful improvements to its hybrid action turn-based combat, making it more engaging than before. The outcome is an RPG with pacing struggles, but still manages to be a good sequel in an already great series. Daybreak 2 takes place shortly after the events of the previous game, following your mercenary hero Van Ackreid and his friend Elaine as they encounter a mysterious but familiar-looking red monster. In an entertaining twist, that first encounter actually ends with both Van and Elaine dead, with Van's assistant, Agnes, somehow rewinding time in an act of desperation to save them. It's an explosive setup that introduces the timeline hopping mechanic in an interesting way, but rather than making the most of the multiverse's potential for effective and emotional storytelling, Daybreak 2 mostly uses it as a deus ex machina to let the party opt out of sticky situations. This causes the main story to be drawn out over the roughly 60-hour campaign, and the mystery behind the Crimson Monster takes an unfortunate backseat as Van constantly dies in different timelines and tries to find a way to avoid his fate, sometimes going out in overly silly ways, like randomly stepping into a room filled with explosives. Being forced into bad endings like this just adds to the tedium, and hopping back in time gets particularly annoying in Chapter 3, as its sporadic use makes the story's flow feel, well, choppy. Even though the overarching tale falls flat, Daybreak 2's focus on being a more personal story means it's filled to the brim with some of the best character moments in a Trails game yet.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
It manages to keep its growing roster under control this time by elevating some minor characters into full party members. A few old ones have been brought back as well, including Swin and Nadia from Trails into Reverie, who finally feel like complete characters here as their arcs cleverly conclude. Speaking of Reverie, Daybreak 2 follows a somewhat similar story structure. The first two chapters are actually split into two different routes, with Van leading one and Swin and Nadia the other. It's a smart decision and a prime example of how Daybreak 2 skillfully handles its expanding cast. There's even a version of the Reverie Quarter called the Merchant Garten, which brings characters from split routes together to fight through a roguelike dungeon full of randomized floors with a boss monster at the end. While this dungeon is completely optional, there are plenty of worthwhile incentives to tackle it. The main rewards are skill points, which let you permanently boost the capabilities of your party's attacks. You can also unlock cosmetic goodies like alternate costumes, and in what's always a breath of fresh air, those can only be earned in-game, so there are no real-world microtransactions at all.
I think I deserve a thank you.
The Trails series is known for its in-depth side quests like this, and Daybreak 2 is no different. They offer incredible amounts of world building, along with useful rewards such as rare items to help Van and his friends on their journey. They also show that despite Van's more morally gray methods, he has a strong code of ethics and knows when to stand up for what's right. Given his unique approach to mercenary work and the complex situations that come with it, it makes sense that the LGC morality system returns as well, but it lacks a similar impact this time. After completing a side quest, you can sometimes decide its conclusion, which then makes progress towards Van's Law, Gray, and Chaos parameters. In the first game, Van's affinity impacted which allies would join him in the later chapters, but there's disappointingly no such trade-offs in Daybreak 2, which makes the LGC's inclusion puzzling as it literally doesn't affect the story. Trails Through Daybreak mix up the series' traditional turn-based combat by weaving in real-time action elements, much like Falcom's sister series Ys. You approach the enemy out in the field and attack enough times to stun it, then transition to the much more fleshed out turn-based portion. And if that sounds familiar, it's a system the incredible Metaphor ReFantazio took some cues from last year. It was admirable to try something new, but Daybreak's attempt at action felt quite bare bones. So it's nice that the sequel has added a few new mechanics to help make that real-time kickoff have a much bigger impact.
Over here! All for you!
For starters, when the enemy is stunned, you can now execute a powerful dual attack between two characters, which brings a much more exciting and quick end to battles. Dodging enemy attacks at the last moment also lets you swap control of characters and unleash a powerful strike that guarantees a stun. While the bulk of the combat system and the majority of its depth still revolves around turn-based elements, these additions to the real-time action make it feel like a perfect appetizer to a main course.
Let's
Like previous games, battles involve a turn order timeline for you to plan around. Various bonuses will appear on the timeline, such as critical hit guarantees and zero arts, which make it so magic spells that usually have long casting times can be fired off immediately. That provides an extra layer of strategy as you have to take into consideration which bonuses align with which characters on the timeline. Learning how to manipulate the order makes combat much more engaging, and it's crucial to winning some of the harder late-game fights. The positioning of your party still plays an important role in combat too, as some attacks have various additional effects when used in certain spots, making them useful in a variety of situations. None of what makes this so fun is new to Daybreak 2, mind you, but it's still important that the sequel doesn't mess any of it up either. The customization system remains virtually unchanged from its predecessor as well, but it still offers a great degree of flexibility when building out your party. Each character has 4 lines: weapon, shield, drive, and extra. By slotting elemental gems called quartz into certain lines, your characters can learn shard skills, which are passive abilities. It's fun to play around with the various quartz to see which combinations you can create to unlock different abilities. Finding more powerful quartz and experimenting with them adds a nice layer of progression, making your characters feel even stronger as they reach the finale. Daybreak's bonding events are back, once again letting Van hang out with his allies between big events in order to get to know them better. They offer a lot of character development outside of the main story, and the attention to detail when it comes to connections and references of past games really expands on the Trails lore in a way that other ongoing series could only dream of. Thankfully, Daybreak 2 has brought back minigames that its predecessor noticeably removed. Not only is the fishing minigame back, but it's been revamped and simplified for the better. Instead of the laborious button mashing to reel in fish like how so many other RPGs approach it, you just have to time your button presses well within a certain area multiple times to catch the fish. It's a much smoother experience and less tiring on your thumbs.
Not too shabby.
Sadly, the other minigames are hit and miss. The new card game 7 Hearts involves stacking elemental cards to deal damage to your opponents. It's a faster paced and welcome substitute to Blade from Trails of Cold Steel, but it isn't as fleshed out as the collectible Vantage Masters minigame from Trails of Cold Steel 3.
Oh man.
There is also a rather plain but innocuous new hacking game where you simply avoid hostile robots and reach the end of the maze. But the basketball and tailing minigames are the true offenders. The former is entirely too easy, and the latter, it's just as bad as it might sound. You'll occasionally be asked to tail a suspect and hide whenever they look back at you, and these sequences are always just boring, annoying time wasters that would have been better off gone entirely. The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak 2 makes a few missteps with the pacing and structure of its multiversal story, but it's buoyed by a focus on quality character moments and impressive world building over earth-shaking reveals. The turn-based combat and party customization haven't changed much at all, but they don't really need to. And the real-time action side of things has seen some small but meaningful improvements. Daybreak 2 doesn't move the needle in the overall Calvard saga much, but this more personal story is still another good entry in the Trails series overall. For more, check out our reviews of the first Trails Through Daybreak or Metaphor ReFantasio for a different take on hybrid RPG combat. And for everything else, stick with IGN.